So I got off the line. That all happened as normal. But then I noticed that a guy who had started behind me was kind of gaining on me. And I initially saw him in my rear view mirror, but then we were side by side. And my focus was sort of on him at that point. It hadn't even occurred to me that a car had stalled in front of me on the grid. And it's a really bad mistake to make when you're a racing driver. Your eyes should always be forward, and you should rely on your peripheral vision to kind of take care of what's happening around you. And for that split second, I kind of switched off and I was focusing on the guy next to me when I should have been looking forward, and I didn't see Dan who had stalled in front of me. And
Hey everyone, it's Shivam Chaudhary and this is episode 7 of Adrenaline Funkies, the podcast. Today I'm really excited because we have an ex-F3 driver as our guest. And he's given such amazing tips if anyone wants to get into motorsport. He's survived the toughest of the toughest. He's had ups and downs, and hopefully today he helps you learn something that will help you in your future too. Thank you.
Hi, Ameya. So let's start with your own introduction. Tell us about yourself.
sure. First of all, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
So I am Ameya Vaidhyanathan, and from 2015 till 2020, I was a racing driver, competing in events all around the world. I started off in the UK, and then I ended up finishing in Japan. Unfortunately, the pandemic happened, and due to various factors, I just couldn't continue. But yeah, very, very lucky to have done what I did.
And it's just
Great.
really inspiring. Of course, you're most known for your crash. And
Yeah.
the way you came back from that, I was looking at the footage. I can't believe how you got back. There was no halo on your car as well.
Right.
It's incredible. So first, let's start in your childhood. What first sparked your interest in motorsport?
Pune, and then I actually grew up in this island called Bahrain. I guess it's more
Oh,
famous now
Bahrain.
because
Oh,
yeah,
wow, yeah.
it's probably more famous now because F1 goes there, so people know about it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like a dot on the map. But yeah, so with respect to how I got into the sport, it was obviously through the Grand Prix there. I think the first one was in 2004, and yeah, I went to that race, and I was just blown away by everything that was happening.
Yeah, the first, yeah, Bahrain.
Yeah, I remember being obsessed with Kimi Raikkonen. I just thought he was so
Oh,
cool.
yeah, Kimi Raikkonen. Yeah,
Um,
Iceman.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just fell in love with it then, and I kept going back year after year. But like there was no real thoughts about pursuing it as a career, honestly. It was just like, wow, these people are so
He's
amazing,
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
doing what they do. But I had always been kind of dead set on pursuing education and taking it to a really high level. So after Bahrain, I actually went to boarding school in the UK when I was 13 years old.
Oh, okay.
That was really tough. I mean, being away from family,
Of course,
in a
of course.
completely new place, I had to learn a lot on my feet, so to speak. Luckily, I had my older brother there first,
Oh,
so
okay.
that was a really
Yeah.
good cushion. But yeah, a lot of adjusting to do. And I think since that point, I had been in the UK since, if that makes sense. So like, I graduated
Yeah.
in the summer of 2014, and literally a week later, I started preparing to be a racing driver.
Oh, wow. So, were there any specific moments in your childhood or, after college? Like, why did you decide to then go for racing?
So there was this documentary that came out in 2011 about Ayrton Senna. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah, yeah, Netflix. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that just kind of changed my whole perspective on things because I really wasn't a sporty kid at all. Like my diet was, like I was just fueled on like Mars bars and iced teas,
Yeah,
and like I
yeah.
just didn't play sports. Even though, the school I went to was quite sporty, I'd say it was perhaps more academic focused. Like I was just buried in my book eating a bunch of junk food. So like I
Yeah.
was like the last person to go on a sports pitch. But I saw that movie, and yeah,
It changed.
it
Yeah.
yeah, actually quite literally changed my life. But yeah, I was just really inspired by his story, and I think it's especially telling, like now with the advent of AI and how that's progressing. You often
Mm.
see man and machine pitted against each other, especially when it comes to creative fields. So like artists are kind of getting replaced by AI that can, generate
Yeah,
images in a second, and it's concerning. Whereas when you look at Ayrton's story, it's about kind of finding harmony between man and machine, and that really
correct.
inspired me. I was thinking,
Mm.
what is this limit that he's chasing after? I'd really love to feel that one day. And
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of insane coincidences happened. Like, for instance, in the building where I was living, there was a guy who used to work in Formula One, and
Oh,
I had a offhand conversation with him, and he kind of said that, if it's going to be really tough, but if you want to give it a try, I can perhaps guide you the steps you'd need to take to try and make it happen. And at that point, I'm not sure how many people know about this, but conventionally people start racing in karts when they're like 4 or 5 years
yeah,
old,
when they're very, very young.
very young. And I had no experience, let alone, like, I wasn't even a sportsman. So, I had a lot of head scratching moments, and,
Yeah,
it was a real
yeah,
leap of
that makes
faith to kind
sense.
of, yeah, I kind of went back to him and said,
Yeah.
you're giving me this chance. I'd be stupid not to take it. So let's just go all in.
Correct. Yeah. So, did your family support your passion for racing during when you decided to change? Like, imagine going to college for all that time, not even thinking about Formula One, and then watching like a movie, and just changing your whole mindset. How did your family react to that? And just a point I want to make: how did Senna make you want to drive? It's about Senna who dies while driving.
That's a really good point. I don't think anybody's ever brought that point up before. So good on you for asking me
Yeah.
the tough questions. But yeah, luckily I came from a very supportive family. Like, they were fully behind. Of course, like my mother, she was a little apprehensive because of how dangerous the sport is.
Yeah.
But she had faith that I would kind of approach it sensibly. I had good people around me,
Correct.
and
Yeah.
yeah. So, and my father, he was all for it as well. But to your
Yeah.
point about Senna, yeah, of course, the movie ends in a really, really, really horrible way. But I had kind of, understood that because of his death, technology had advanced to such a point where going racing was still dangerous, but the
It was
the
much better,
statistics, if you like, yeah,
much safer.
much safer. The odds of something like that happening, touch wood, now are
Correct,
a lot smaller.
correct,
So
correct.
yeah, I took confidence in that.
Yeah. So, after deciding that, I want to start racing now, can you describe
Hmm.
your journey? Like, how did you go from where you were to then ultimately racing?
Yeah, man, it was a roller coaster. A lot of it was done on a simulator, because that's probably the most cost-effective way
Yeah, yeah,
to
sim
kind of
racing.
get you up to speed. Of course, like, you have to have the initial investment of setting a simulator up, and that's not cheap. But
Of course, but
getting a track day.
it's
Sorry.
much, more cost effective than race, like actual go-karting because of the fuel and all. It's just a
Right.
one-time purchase and then you can use it forever.
Exactly. And it's one of the, if you make a mistake on a simulator, you can just press reset and go again. But if you have a
Correct.
big accident in a car, that's pretty much your day over. And given how little
Foreshadowing.
experience, yeah, don't say that. But yeah, I just needed that buffer to kind of get myself up to speed. So I spent months and months just driving lap after lap, trying to learn the basics of, when to turn and when to pick up the throttle. How do curbs affect the car? Just things
Correct.
like that. Of course, it's never going to be one-to-one. Like, even the best F1 simulators in the world can't replicate in real time what's happening on track. That's just a fact because of how nature works, right? Like, the slightest pickup
Yeah.
in wind will completely change the car balance.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Correct.
But at least for the fundamentals, it can give you a pretty good idea. So I spent a few months doing that, and then I had my first test in a go-kart, which was a pretty brutal experience. Like, it's not like your regular arrive and drive go-karts. This is like a
Correct.
proper
Yeah.
racing go-kart. And just to paint a picture for for the people who haven't sat in one, doing a day in a go-kart like that is so physical that it sort of feels like you're on the losing end of a boxing match. Just to put it in
Yeah.
perspective,
Correct.
like,
Yeah.
you get absolutely battered from going around in one of those things. So yeah, I experienced that harsh reality, and then a couple of weeks of doing that, I then kind of graduated into a tin top. So basically, like, just like a normal saloon car
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
around
Yeah.
the track, and yeah, that was really difficult. Like, the fear factor just kind of gets multiplied by 10 when you're approaching corners much faster.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You have less margin for error. Yeah, that was really frightening. Like it took a while to kind of get over it.
Correct. So, how did you prepare for your debut in Formula? I think it was Formula Renault 2.0 NEC series. I'm pretty sure. How
No, it
did
was
you
actually
prepare for that?
it was British
Oh,
Formula 4. Man,
oh
somebody is
yeah, yeah.
spreading a lot of misinformation out. But
No, I saw it on
yeah.
your Wikipedia. So,
Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah, it was in British Formula 4. It was at a track called Oulton Park, which will become relevant when we talk about the crash. But yeah, did I prepare? So, like I mentioned, it was just a lot of simulator work.
yeah.
I had a couple of days in F4 under my belt at that point. I was actually really fortunate to be able to test at this track in Spain. I don't remember the exact cost, but the reason we went there was that it was relatively much cheaper to rent the track out for an extended period of time. So this was the winter of 2014. So we had booked quite a few days there, and I just did lap after lap trying to nail the basics. Luckily, my future teammate at the time was testing at that track as well, so I had a very good reference in terms of lap times. So I slowly chipped away to get closer to his time, and then then my debut kind of just happened. I kind of went into it with no expectations. And initially, even though it was a big investment to get me to that stage, we were always viewing it from the point of, okay, let's just see what happens. We're not committing to anything long term. We have no
Yeah.
expectations. Let's just see how it goes. And I think that was ideal. I didn't have pressure on that side of things. But yeah, in my second race weekend of that championship, I actually ended up on the podium. So naturally,
Oh wow,
expectations just kind of
huge
rose really
morale booster.
quickly. It was a crazy race as well. So I had a really good time on that track. Like I just felt so confident every time I rocked up to that track. It's not a track that exists anymore, sadly.
Oh,
But it was this really nice track in the UK called Rockingham. And yeah, I felt really confident after practice. But qualifying was a disaster. Like I had a couple of lap times deleted for track limit, which is
oh,
basically when you go past the white line,
yeah,
all four
yeah.
wheels. And yeah, I was just so disappointed. I qualified like 15th or something. I was just really salty after that. And
15th to third or second?
second, I think second.
Oh
So
my God. Wow.
um, it was crazy. Like it was helped a lot by the fact that the leader crashed, and then a lot of people crashed with him in the first corner. So I think like
Yeah.
immediately five cars were eliminated, but then I managed to pull off some pretty nice overtakes and fought my way back to second. And yeah,
Wow.
it was just
Yeah.
insane. I think from that point I was like, okay, I'm all in. We have to go all the way. Yeah.
Correct. So, now let's talk about your experiences in racing. What were some of the most memorable things you did? So, I think, again, as per the Wikipedia, your best season was in the Euro Formula Open Championship, where you actually won a race as well.
Right.
You got 5 podiums and you finished fourth in the end. So,
Right.
maybe experiences like that. Talk about your first win or just some really, really memorable things you can remember from your time in racing.
Sure. So yeah, obviously that year was incredible. Just speaking to my first win, I had a really good first round of that championship. Like we had already gone into it with a lot of expectations because this was my second year doing that championship. And
Okay.
if you look through the scale of my career, that's the only time that something like this had happened. And
Yeah.
so I really, felt a lot of momentum behind me because, when you start so late, I kind of one big mistake I felt with how my career panned out was there was always this kind of impetus to kind of rush through the ranks. And if I had a second stab at it, I would have preferred to kind of take my time, get to know the formula a bit better before moving up. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's a separate point. So this was my second year in Euro Formula Open. So I went into it with the expectation to win races, fight at the front, and yeah, like I said, the first one went really well in Portugal, and then we arrived at Spa with a really fast car. Friday had been really tricky for whatever reason. Like I just didn't feel at one with what I had underneath me. There was a lot of back and forth with my engineer about the car setup, and yeah, we were just kind of lost to be honest on Friday. So I went to bed that night thinking, just let's put that day behind us. Tomorrow's a new day, new opportunities, and qualifying went a lot better. I qualified second. And in Spa,
Wow.
for people that don't know, it's notorious for its the slipstream effect. So
Yeah. Eau Rouge. Yeah.
right, on that straight, it really helps if you have a car in front of you to kind of drag you along and increase your straight line speed. So strategy for qualifying is quite important at Spa. And luckily, I was really lucky with my track position and I managed to get a toe. And qualified second. But which at Spa it's a bit of a lottery. You can qualify at the front, but then people can overtake you from behind because of the slipstream.
Correct.
So I knew that if I got into the lead, every lap after that lap needed to be a qualifying lap to break the toe. And luckily, that's exactly what happened. So I got past the leader, and then I kind of drove as if my life depended on it to kind of make a gap. And luckily, yeah, that happened. And yeah, crossing the line that day, like, yeah, it's just hard to put into words, like what.
Must have been so surreal.
Yeah, yeah, it was. I mean, I think my best result before that point had been a second place from the round before. That already felt so
Oh,
good.
wow. Yeah.
But this was like next level. But I think it felt, I don't know, it's kind of hard to articulate, but it felt good for maybe reasons people might not associate it with. So like it wasn't to do with like articles being published about, oh, this guy had just won a race, or like the fame that comes with that. It wasn't about that at all. It's just about what it does to the team. I think there's a common misconception that racing is an individual sport. Like that couldn't be further from the truth. Like
Yeah.
it's a team game through and through. Like, sure, I'm the guy driving the car, but behind me there are engineers who work ridiculous hours trying to extract more performance from the car. There are mechanics who try to kind of execute on setup changes, make sure the car is in pristine condition. The truck driver is driving the car from A to B. The PR people who make sure that people know there is a race going on in the first place. The list just goes on and on. And what a win does to that kind of culture is extraordinary. Like the positive energy that kind of radiates from all the people is, yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just hard to put into words. You have to really kind of be there to feel it. But at that moment, I kind of realized like this is why people race. It's for that team bonding, that team spirit, the kind of giving back to the people that have worked so hard with you. Yeah, it's just phenomenal.
Have you been following Formula One recently?
Yeah, it looks like a really interesting season. Honestly,
Yeah,
it's
so
very
I
close to
was
call.
when you said it's a team sport, I was just remembering what Lando's radio said, the way to win a championship, not by yourself, it's with the team. You're gonna need
Right.
Oscar, you're gonna need everyone with you. So
Tim, we need you to save more tires, please. Just remember every single Sunday morning meeting we have.
Yep, tell him to catch up then, please.
Lando, he can't catch you up. 80th button press, please. And Lando, the safety car window is closed. And Lando, there are 5 laps to go. The way to win a championship is not by yourself, it's with the team. You're going to need Oscar, and you're going to need the team.
Yeah, I tested the Formula 3 car in like halfway through my Euro Formula season, and it was a really difficult test day. Like I just couldn't really extract what the car was asking me to do, and like I honestly felt like that car was driving me rather than the other way around. And every day in that car was just very difficult. But actually, you talk about ups and downs. One big up to that season I felt was that I never gave up. I genuinely can say that I gave 200% to try to get down to what was stopping me from extracting performance. And like I said, I wanted to do it for my guys. Like I had that horrendous crash in Norris Ring, and that was a real dark moment in my life, where, everything just felt like it was over. But it was the team that kind of dragged me out of that. My teammates, they encouraged me to keep going. And I did, it would have been so easy to quit then and there, but I just owed it to myself, to these people, to kind of get down to the bottom of what was happening and keep showing up. I didn't want to just participate. I wanted to win races, fight at the front. And not being able to do that was really painful. But I'm kind of proud that as a team we worked so hard to try to get that back.
Oh yeah. So of course you're completely right. When you're driving, you have to be in sync with the car, and sometimes it just doesn't pan out. But again, it's all about giving your 200% in everything you do. And if you did that, I think that's the best thing that could have come out.
Thank
So now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the crash in 2018. Can you share your thought? How did it affect you? And more importantly, how did you walk away from that?
Yeah, it was really unpleasant, to be honest. Like I said, I had been struggling all season, getting on top of the car. We arrive at Norris Ring, and every weekend I kind of went into the mentality of wanting this next session will be the session where we turn things around and get the ball rolling. So I can't remember. It was race one, I think, or was it race two? Anyway, I'll just tell you what happened, and then my reflections afterwards. So I had like an okay-ish start, but I had a very poor qualifying. So I qualified somewhere near the back, like around 20th or something. So naturally there are a lot of cars in front of you when you're starting that far back. So I got off the line. That all happened as normal. But then I noticed that a guy who had started behind me was kind of gaining on me. And I initially saw him in my rear view mirror, but then we were side by side. And my focus was sort of on him at that point. It hadn't even occurred to me that a car had stalled in front of me on the grid. And it's a really bad mistake to make when you're a racing driver. Your eyes should always be forward, and you should rely on your peripheral vision to kind of take care of what's happening around you. And for that split second, I kind of switched off and I was focusing on the guy next to me when I should have been looking forward. And I didn't see Dan, who had stalled in front of me. And luckily, I saw him like kind of a few hundred of a second before I actually hit him. So I don't have the onboard video with me, but you can see from my onboard that I turned slightly left to try and avoid him, but by that point it was too late. Luckily, had I not turned, I think it would have been a far worse accident for the both of us. But yeah, the cars kind of took the brunt of the damage, and it was just awful, Shivam. Like looking at that back and how big of a mistake that was, because that was Formula 3. It wasn't some small championship. Like, you have the eyes of the world kind of watching, and when you make a mistake on such a big scale, obviously it carries with it very big consequences. So the fallout of that accident was really bad. Not so much in terms of what the articles were saying, or the kind of right. So like just again, back to the team. They had prepared the car so well. I felt really bad for them, and there was like really critical articles of my performance, and a lot of negative comments on social media. That felt bad, but it kind of pales in comparison compared to how much I felt like I had let myself down, my team down. So yeah, it was just a very, very, very dark moment. But like I touched on previously, thankfully it was those very people that kind of encouraged me to keep going, and dragged me back out. I spoke to Dan personally as well, and we had a good exchange. So
Yeah.
just one of those things.
Yeah, must have been, a real eye opener, just being some like part of that. And the fact that you were thinking about your team more than yourself just shows how selfless you are. You're thinking about, what did this do to the team? What did it do to the other person that was driving with me? And not about how you really crash yourself and it was like a really bad position for yourself thing. So,
That's it, yeah.
so yeah, that's going to be all for today. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. No, it's been really nice chatting with you.
Hey everyone, it's Shivam Chaudhary, and that's the end of today's episode. I hope you all learned something from him, since it was truly so inspiring what he's done. Starting so late, but still getting into Formula 3, winning a race, getting on the podiums, doing so well with the ups and downs, and always thinking about your team rather than yourself, not being egoistic. It's all something we heard about today, and it's all something that can help you guys at home. Keep on practicing, and if you guys want to follow in his footsteps in motorsport, be sure to follow his advice, as it can help you a lot.